Confusing fall warblers. Yeah, they can play tricks on you, but you can play a few tricks of your own. There's a flock of them going through my yard right now. Looks like about 20 of them, I think. Out of that 20, it looks like up to a dozen species up here, including some rather unusual ones that came down from further north. They weren't here yesterday, so they came in last night. It was a good migration night. When Roger Torrey Peterson published his Guide to the Birds in 1934, he included a section on confusing fall warblers. Just about every field guide from then on has a section on confusing fall warblers in one way or another. And I don't know if that's a blessing or a curse, because to some extent it makes you think they're supposed to be confusing. A lot of them aren't. Really, if we just used the same tricks in the fall that we used in the spring, we might be able to sort them out pretty quickly. There's a right way and a wrong way to do this. The right way is to use all the subtle, hard-to-see field marks that the warblers are giving you in their fall plumage. Even the face alone can help you figure out every warbler. Oh, who am I kidding? Little twerps don't stand still. They're flitting around up there in the trees, mostly obscured. All I'm really seeing is bird parts, and not that much of that. We need a shortcut. I say it's whatever grabs your attention the fastest. Don't look at the little stuff until you've sorted out the big stuff. It's the usual problem. There are too many choices. In Peterson's original guide, there were 24 confusing fall warblers, and 3 of those weren't warblers. They were birds that just looked like confusing fall warblers. There are actually 48 warblers breeding in North America. The trick is to whittle down the number of possibilities to a number more manageable. One way to do it is to decide what your bird isn't. The first way to do it is to group your birds by color. No, wait a minute. The first step is to group them by geography. I'm in the northeast corner of the United States, not far from the Canadian border. I'm a long way away from a red-faced warbler in Arizona. Altogether, there's about 48 species of wood warblers in North America, and about half of them are where I live in the state of Maine. So I'm going to just use that as my test group and make my point with that. Here are 25 warblers that breed up in my area of Maine. Plus, one of them is an orange crown warbler, which doesn't breed here, but it wanders in often enough it can get confusing. I'm going to lump it in. 25, here we go. I'm just going to use this group to make some suggestions. You could actually make your own group depending on where you are and see if these suggestions work for you. By the way, if you would like to pay my expenses to the Pacific Northwest, I'd be happy to make a list for you. No. Moving on. Trick number 1, a lot of warblers don't change much at all. Black and white warblers, male, doesn't change. You might have to take a second look at a female, but you're not going to need a third look. They look the same spring and fall. Black-throated blue warblers don't change. Female black-throated blue warblers don't change. They are the same obscure pattern spring and fall, but they do have this little white handkerchief in the shoulder, dead giveaway. Wilson's warblers, male, same. Females, immatures, may be a little dark on top of the head where the cap should be, but that's it, same. American redstart, same. Male's orange, female's yellow, youngsters are yellow, but they're the same all the time. And they fan their tails. Northern water thrush, they don't change. I just have one working in the edge of the woods right over here. But they don't change. They're barely warblers. Common yellowthroats take themselves out of consideration. Males are obvious. Females and young, not so much, but the throat is yellow, and they forage so close to the ground most of the time that when you see them, they're acting like common yellowthroats. Yellow warblers, the males are easy. The females, the youngsters, they are a little dimmer, but nothing else is this yellow. They're not that hard. And I've got one coming through my yard right now. And the funny thing is, they do stay on the other side of the road over where there's a field over there. They never come into my yard unless there's a foraging flock to join. And I should mention something about foraging flocks. I'm actually up by the mailbox right now. And in the fall, mixed species will get together and forage all together. Number 1, there's safety in numbers, more eyes to look for trouble. Number 2, There's some evidence that when you get a lot of birds flitting around an area, the bugs get nervous, they flit more, they're easier to catch with that kind of cooperative feeding. And in my experience, foraging flocks often form around chickadees. Chickadees are really observant and they're talkative. So if there's any trouble at all, they'll sound the alarm. And the whole forest knows it. Even squirrels pay attention to what the chickadees are saying about danger. So if you've got a mystery bird, it's probably not one of the ones that you're pretty familiar with, that you can usually recognize most of the time in the spring, because most of the time you can recognize them in the fall. It's got to be one of the tougher ones, but we've just reduced the list by that many. Anyway, there are a bunch of fall warblers that do sort of look like faded versions of themselves. The streaks may be a little duller, the colors may be a little duller, but otherwise they look pretty much the way they did in the spring. Black-throated green warbler, same. Except maybe without the black throat. Males probably still have it, females and youngsters really never did. Magnolia warbler, just a duller version of its spring self. Males, a little more obvious. Females, the streaking may really just be missing, but otherwise it looks pretty much the same. And they have this two-tone undertail, black at the tip, white at the base, and it's so stark, and they're always showing it to you that that's really all you need. Canada warbler? Sure, males look pretty much the same, only duller. Still have the necklace and the streaks coming down from the necklace, but no streaks above. Females, just a very dull version of the same. And they both have this bright white eye ring that is probably the most bright white eye ring of any warbler in the universe. Big fade from the yellow rump warbler, but they've got all the same field marks. It's just gray where it used to be black. And in any plumage of either gender, this inverted horseshoe streak pattern on the breast is visible when they're facing you. And they're always facing you. They don't get very nervous about humans. They are kind of curious. Furthermore, they never shut up. They have a quip call note that is different from most of the other eastern warblers, and they're doing it all the time. I don't even have to look twice. I don't usually even look to know there's a yellow rump warbler there. Oh, and if they fly away, yellow rump. So the shortcut to quickly getting to those birds that are truly confusing is to get rid of the ones that aren't. And just like that, you've gone from 25 down to 13. So for the rest, what grabs your attention the fastest? I say it's wing bars. Wing bars will get your attention the fastest. Even Peterson grouped them on different pages, wing bars on one, non-wing bars on the other, and that was 91 years ago. Sorry, there's a lot going on up here. So, leaving out the birds that don't change at all, leaving out the birds that don't change very much, and leaving out the birds that don't have wing bars, suddenly we're just down to 8. A northern parula in fall looks very much like the northern parula in spring. It's still bluish green on top, still bright yellow to orange in the throat, changing to white underneath the bird. This is only confusing if you're looking up and it's not showing you very much. You might mistake it for something else, but the moment it gives you a better angle, you'll figure it out. A chestnut-sided warbler looks like this in the spring. But with a yellow cap, gray face, and bright white eye ring, this bird is spooky looking. Nothing else looks like this. One glance at that face and you can move on to the next bird. Let's get rid of palm warbler right away. It doesn't really have wing bars, but the edges of the primaries may give that impression in the wrong light. Doesn't matter. They range in color from yellow to brown. Doesn't matter. The bird bobs its tail like crazy, almost never stops. If you see a warbler doing this, you're done. Even the eastern phoebes look at this tail bobbing bird with envy. So we're down to 5 out of 25. And that's the whole point of this exercise, to see how quickly we can boil it down to what really matters. Those warblers that really do change color in the fall. Those that really are confusing. In my area, that's blackpoll, bay-breasted, Blackburnian, Cape May, and pine warbler. Now, in your area, this is probably going to be a different set, but the principle remains the same. How fast can we boil this down? I think we can deal with pine warbler first because so many of them are just so yellow. Adults certainly, females not so much, immatures maybe not much at all. But they nest in my yard, so maybe I just have it easier. No matter what the plumage, there's usually enough yellow in the face to see a nice olive pattern, almost like a mask around and below the eye. If there's enough yellow, the yellow goes quite far down the chest, and there's usually some discernible breast streaking. I think we can deal with Blackburnian next because their wing bars really stand out. They tend to be pretty heavily streaked, and the eyebrow, which is going to be strong, may have a little color in it, and the cheeks tend to be a pretty dark patch. These are hard, they're not that hard, not like the next three. Bay-breasted. I struggle with these, even though they're my favorite warbler. If they keep enough bay along the flanks, they're easy. Sometimes it just looks like a faded wine stain under the wings. But it's really the least streaky of the troublesome warblers. Pretty light at the breast. If anything, it's the back that's a little more streaky. Cape May warbler is really annoying in the fall because it can vary so much in color. If they're still residually yellow, it's not too hard. In that case, there's probably some greenish yellow in the face, along the wing feathers, and especially around the rump. In most plumages, it's pretty streaky along the breast and flank. And if you do see one, make sure the feet are black, because on this one, they're yellow. Black poles are also annoying because of their varied color. Adults are clearly gray and black with maybe just a hint of yellow wash. Immature birds can be annoyingly greenish yellow. The breast streaks are still right where they should be on an adult in the spring, but they have faded almost completely out of sight on some birds. Okay, you see what we did there? We went from 25 and narrowed it down as fast as we can by throwing out the ones that are easy, the ones that are almost easy, and the ones that don't have wing bars, so that we could really focus on the tough ones and look for the signs that matter. And that's pretty much what we do in the spring. We focus on the big field marks first. That'd be throat color, breast streaks, wing bars, eye ring. And then, if we need to, we'll focus on the minutiae like under tail patterns and facial markings. Let's try it on warblers that don't have wing bars. Right away, we're down to 12. And we already said some of them are obvious enough that they're really not confusing fall warblers, so they're out. And that was unfair because really young warblers and some females can be so pale that they really are still confusing. But this is just a quick pass to try to sort things out before they flit away. If we get hung up, we can go back to some of those birds and reconsider some of the ones we just threw out. So just 4. And I'd say Nashville warbler is pretty easy. When you're looking up at it, the yellow is bright all the way under the belly. And if it shows you its gray shower cap and bright white eye ring, you're there. If it doesn't have a yellow throat, you may be looking at a mourning warbler. They've never been in my yard, so don't get excited. It's got maybe the vestige of a dark black throat, maybe a small white eye ring, not nearly as bright an eye ring as you would find on the McGilvery's warbler out west. But mourning warblers really prefer to stay near the ground. I don't see them foraging up in treetops much at all. And so they act like mourning warblers, not at all like the ones who are flitting around up there right now. Is that a Philadelphia vireo? It's only the third one I've had in my yard. They nest in Maine, a little further north, and they do migrate through, but I don't see them that often in my yard. In 1934, Roger Torrey Peterson said, look out for these guys. It can be confused as one of your confusing fall warblers. And take a look at this really ugly ruby crown kinglet. That's also on Peterson's list. There's really just 2 that are so drab and so similar that for confusing fall warblers without wing bars, they are the problem up here. Tennessee warbler and orange crown warbler. They are so drab without really any easy field marks. And you know how I know those are one of the ones I'm dealing with? Because they are so drab with no field marks. If I see that, I say, okay, well, you know, it's one of the 2. Tennessee warblers look like this in the spring, but they can be really yellowish green in the fall. Orange crown warblers aren't any better. The orange crown warbler has a noticeable half eye ring, whereas the Tennessee warbler has kind of a black line through the eye. It's just the first thing I look for. The orange-crowned warbler also has the faintest streaks in the breast that a Tennessee doesn't. That usually gets me there. And that's just the birds I have to deal with. Prairie warblers also nest in Maine, but I've ever only had one singing in my tree, and that was in the spring, so I've never seen one in the fall, so I shouldn't have left it out, but I did. And I can only imagine what it's like in Georgia and Florida, where you've got all your own local warblers, the hoodeds, the Kentucky warblers, prothonotary warbler, worm-eating warbler, Swainson's warbler, and you've got to deal with all of my warblers coming through to you. Good luck with that. Look, there are plenty of tutorials out there, be it online, be it in books, whatever, to help you identify specifically what warbler you're looking at. But you can't identify anything if it's gone in a split second after you see it. This whole thing has been about how do you rapidly make a decision about what is it you're looking at. Sometimes you have to speed up your identifications by throwing out the birds that it couldn't be, the ones you already know, or the ones that do or don't have wing bars according to what you're seeing, and quickly sort out the possibilities from a much smaller set. Or you can take a photo of the bird and analyze it later over a glass of Chardonnay. That is, if the bird will hold still long enough to focus, and it's not obscured by leaves, and it's not so deep in the shadows you can't pick it out. I can't wait for spring when they start singing again. Is it as dry where you are? This is the lowest I've seen this lake in 25 years of living in this log cabin in Maine. Wow.